Once there was a lighthouse that stood on a high place, along a rocky shore, overlooking a storm-tossed sea. It had a bright and penetrating light, and it sounded a clear-toned warning to the ships that sailed along that coast.
Sail straight, sail true.
And when a ship ignored the call, or somehow failed to see the light and was caught by the currents,
and dashed against the rocks,
its timbers cracked,
its sailors lost,
plunging into a sea as cold as death.
Over the side!
We're going down!
Abandoned ship!
God have mercy on our souls!
The crew of the lighthouse left the safety of the shore, and rowing fearlessly in the smallest of boats against the prevailing current of the day, they gave themselves to the dangerous work of rescue.
The lighthouse was small, just enough room for the light and a place to keep the boats. The crew of the lighthouse were simple fisher folk who gave freely, knowing firsthand the cruelty of the sea.
Their sacrifice did not go unnoticed.
They do so much and never ask for anything in return. They do so much and never ask for anything in return.
They saved my life, I'd be dead today if I hadn't seen the light. They saved my life, I'd be dead today if I hadn't seen the light.
What those people do with that lighthouse, it's wonderful. What those people do with that lighthouse, it's wonderful.
The Coast Guard record shows 117 separate rescues in the past year. That's 4 times more than any other lighthouse.
With almost no money, no equipment, no training, they keep that life-saving thing going day and night.
Well, I say it's time we all pitched in and helped them out. Well, I say it's time we all pitched in and helped them out.
Well, I say it's time we all pitched in and helped them out. Well, I say it's time we all pitched in and helped them out.
Support for the lighthouse grew.
New lifeboats were purchased, commercial ones designed for the task of outreach.
Special training was required for the crews.
The leaders of the lighthouse were asked to speak at rescue conferences.
A professional captain was hired.
More and more people attended the regular crew meetings.
They listened to the captain talk about the work.
The little building couldn't hold them all.
They started a building campaign.
A stunning new facility was constructed around the shell of the old one.
Sail straight.
The light and warning signal were renovated to make them compatible with the style of the whole building.
Sail true.
The lens of the beacon was replaced with colored glass, so the light would be more pleasing to the eye.
Sail straight.
And the tones of the horn were softened to a more sophisticated call.
Sail straight, more or less. Sail true for the most part.
As the years went by, the work expanded in new directions.
The loyal ladies of the Light Society will be holding their monthly luncheon in the upstairs tea room on Tuesday the 21st at 12 o'clock. The topic will be needlework patterns for the ornamental life jacket.
There are still some seats left for the annual formal fundraising banquet. Tickets are available from the Lighthouse Social Chairman at $100 per couple.
As the importance of the lighthouse grew, certain compromises were unavoidable. The constant sound of the horn disrupted many of the station's social events, and the light seemed garish at the more elegant gatherings. The heads of various lighthouse committees met and developed an appropriate schedule for the warnings.
But just when it seemed that all was as it should be, on the evening of the most successful fundraising banquet in the history of the house,
Disaster struck!
Look, on the rocks!
Shipwreck!
Into the boats!
the dinner guests watched in amazement as the lighthouse erupted into a frenzy of action. Men and women in dirty raincoats ran through the banquet hall.
Where are the boats?
They're downstairs. upstairs!
It's locked!
Well, who's got the key?
Pry it open!
With a terrible commotion, the lifeboats were dragged out of the basement and launched into the stormy sea. Flashes of lightning lit the way to the sinking ship. It was an ocean-going trawler from a foreign port, carrying a load of refugees. Many of the victims had been badly injured as the surf pounded the vessel into pieces against the reef. With a desperate haste, the first load of survivors were carried into the lighthouse. They were a shocking sight.
Their faces, dark and different.
Screaming things in strange languages.
Bleeding on the carpet.
In the confusion, it was all that anyone could do to finish their dinner.
In the weeks that followed, there were whispers in high places.
25% fewer pledges than last year's dinner. Scandalous.
Scandalous, we mean 100% with the endowment situation. I know we're going to be in the red line.
And they say there were drugs on board, too.
Drugs on board, you know,
Well,
the
that
sugar
doesn't surprise me with those kind of people.
Well, if you ask me, they didn't belong in our waters. Something ought to be done.
A report of an emergency meeting of the Lighthouse Executive Council.
In the light of recent events, the committee has decided that future rescue efforts should be confined to the truly shipwrecked. That is, those who are victims of misfortune at sea through no fault of their own.
We did investigate the possibility of providing separate facilities for these unfortunates. After considering the start-up costs of such an initiative, however, it seemed clear to us this is a job already being done better by 1,000 points of light other than our own.
For this reason, we've decided to terminate services to sinking ships at the primary lighthouse site. Of course, a comprehensive list of referral lighthouses and rescue stations will be maintained for those of you who wish to continue volunteering in this area.
There were those who objected to the decision,
But we've always had lifeboats.
and a few went further.
How can you call yourselves a lighthouse if you don't even save lives?
This unhappy minority left the lighthouse and moved down the coast.
There they banded together.
And with the force of their convictions,
They built their own little lighthouse
that stood on a high place
along a rocky shore.
overlooking a storm-tossed sea,
It had a bright and penetrating light.
and it sounded a clear-toned warning to the ships that sailed along that coast.
Sail straight.
Sail true.
And whenever a ship went down on the rocks, God have mercy on our souls! The crew of the lighthouse left the safety of the shore and rowing fearlessly in the smallest of boats against the prevailing current of the day, they gave themselves to the dangerous work of rescue.
And as the story goes, their sacrifice did not go unnoticed. Support for the lighthouse grew.
Commercial lifeboats were purchased, crewed by well-trained sailors with professional captains.
A building program was begun.
The work expanded in new directions.
And rescue operations caused more and more problems.
Once again, there were incidents
And whispers.
And emergency meetings.
and heated debates.
And a minority who could not compromise left and set up their own lighthouse.
And so it continued with another lighthouse that stood on a high place along a rocky shore
And so
overlooking a storm
it continued.
tossed sea.
With another lighthouse.
It had a bright and
that stood on a
penetrating
high
light.
place
And it
along
sounded
a
a
rocky
clear
shore,
continued
warning
overlooking a
to the
storm
ships
another
tossed
lighthouse
sailed along
It
that
had a
coast.
That stood on a high
penetrating
place
light.
And so
along
it
a rocky
continued.
shore,
Clear-toned warning.
overlooking
so
a
it continued.
storm-tossed
along that
sea.
coast.
And
It had
so
a
it
bright
continued.
and penetrating light.
And so it
And it sounded a
continued.
clear-toned
And
warning
so
to
it
the ships
continued.
that sailed along
And so
that
it
coast.
continued. And so it continued.
Until today.
Many large and elegant lighthouses stand, looking out at that dangerous sea, standing and watching, while ships are caught by the currents,
Dashed against the rocks.
Their timbers cracked.
their sailors lost. plunging into a sea as cold as death.